Cassette tape player. The cassette tape player, also known as a tape recorder, was one of the most popular music devices from the 1970s all the way through the 1990s. It worked by playing magnetic tape that was stored inside a small plastic shell called a cassette. When you pressed play, a small metal pin called the playhead would touch the magnetic tape and read the sound information recorded on it. What made cassette players so popular was that for the first time, people could record their own music at home, something that was never possible before. Cassette players were also portable. The Sony Walkman, released in 1979, let people listen to music while walking, jogging, or even on a bus. However, cassette tapes had one major problem. The tape inside could get tangled, stretched, or eaten by the player, which would completely destroy your music. That's why when the CD player arrived offering much cleaner sound and no tape problems, most people quickly switched over. CD player. The CD player, which stands for compact disc player, became the dominant music device from the late 1980s all the way through the early 2000s. Unlike cassette tapes that use magnetic tape, a CD stored music as tiny microscopic pits and bumps on a shiny reflective disc. When you pressed play, a laser beam inside the player would read those pits and bumps and convert them into the music you hear. Compared to cassette tapes, CDs sounded much cleaner and sharper because digital audio has no background hiss or tape noise. However, CDs had one big weakness. They were very easy to scratch, and a scratched CD would skip songs or stop playing altogether. That's why when MP3 players arrived, offering thousands of songs with no physical disc to damage, people slowly started moving away from CDs. VCR. VCR stands for video cassette recorder, and it was the main way people watched movies at home throughout the 1980s and 1990s. It worked very similarly to a cassette tape player, but instead of storing music, the VHS tape stored video and audio together on a much larger magnetic tape. What made the VCR so revolutionary was that for the first time, people could watch movies at home whenever they wanted instead of only in cinemas. And not just that, the VCR also let you record live TV programs so you could watch them later. However, VHS tapes had the same problem as cassette tapes. The magnetic tape inside would degrade over time, causing the picture to become blurry or unwatchable. DVD player. DVD stands for digital versatile disc, and the DVD player replaced the VCR as the main home video device from the late 1990s onward. Just like a CD player uses a laser to read music, a DVD player uses a laser to read video and audio data stored as microscopic pits on the disc. Compared to VHS, DVD offered much better picture quality, clearer sound, and the disc never degraded in quality no matter how many times you watched it. And not just that, DVDs also had special features that VHS never had, like chapter menus, multiple language options, subtitles, and behind-the-scenes extras. However, a DVD could still get scratched just like a CD, and a badly scratched DVD would freeze or skip during playback. LaserDisc. LaserDisc was actually the very first optical disc format for home video, and it came out way back in 1978, even before VHS became popular. LaserDisc looked like a giant silver CD and stored movies with much better picture and sound quality than VHS tapes. However, the biggest problem with LaserDisc was its size. At 30 centimeters wide, it was enormous and very inconvenient to store or carry around. And not just that, LaserDisc players were also very expensive, which meant only wealthy people or serious movie collectors could actually afford one. MP3 player. The MP3 player became popular in the late 1990s and completely changed the way people listened to music by making their entire music library completely digital. Instead of a physical tape or disc, MP3 players stored music as digital files, directly on a built-in memory chip or a small memory card. The most famous MP3 player was the Apple iPod, released in 2001, which could hold up to 1,000 songs in a device that fit right in your pocket. What made MP3 players so revolutionary was that you no longer needed to carry a stack of CDs or tapes. Everything was in one tiny device. MiniDisc. The MiniDisc was Sony's attempt to replace the cassette tape in the early 1990s with a small re-recordable digital disc. It was smaller than a CD, but offered the same digital sound quality. And unlike a CD, you could record your own music onto it just like a cassette. However, despite being a genuinely great product, the MiniDisc never became popular outside of Japan, because by the time it launched, CDs were already everywhere. That's why, even though the MiniDisc was technically better than the CD in many ways, it quietly disappeared and is now one of the most forgotten formats in music history. Betamax. Betamax was Sony's videotape format that competed directly with VHS in the late 1970s and 1980s, and it actually had better picture quality than VHS. However, Betamax lost the format war against VHS for one simple reason. VHS tapes could hold much longer recordings, up to 6 hours compared to Betamax's 1 hour. Because of this, movie studios and rental stores chose to release movies on VHS rather than Betamax, which meant Betamax users had almost nothing to to watch. This is actually one of the most famous examples in tech history of a superior product losing to an inferior one, simply because of business decisions, not quality.